Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Gursant Singh, and I'll be doing a short review of SikhNet's new animated film, Kaur. The brave story of a courageous Sikh woman is uplifting just by virtue of the Mai Bhago Kaur Ji narrative, and the effort to try to encourage girls in all pursuits is admirable. But SikhNet's hidden agenda and their motivation behind this film needs to be examined closely. SikhNet is clearly trying to pander to young women in the film. I say that based on my 30 years of personal experience and knowledge of the people within Yogi Bhajan's cult who made the cartoon and their willingness to ignore what happened to young women who were in Yogi Bhajan's orbit on Planet Bhajan. It's a universe no girl or woman would willingly enter. In fact, the warrior spirit of Mai Bhago Kaur Ji would be roused by the exploitation of Yogi Bhajan's female harem members who were abused and raped by Yogi Bhajan. SikhNet directors are a bunch of hypocrites, as SikhNet tries to censor brave women who spoke out against Yogi Bhajan's abuses in real life, and these women are slandered by Yogi Bhajan's apologists and by the very Bhajanist organizations that are promoting this cartoon. It's a blame the victim maneuver to discredit the survivors of sexual assault, and it's a battle that Yogi Bhajan's defenders stubbornly continue in all their propaganda of the Yogi Bhajan cult. In addition, the film is very condescending and insulting to Sikhs from Punjab, as white Bhajanists attempt to educate Sikhs, and it stinks that SikhNet goes for this angle in the film. SikhNet shows their racist attitudes of white supremacy when they depict Mai Bhago Kaur Ji with lily-white skin, a completely Western face, and even touting an American accent, while her Sikh Punjabi father, who discourages Mai Bhago Kaur Ji from engaging in the battle as a warrior, has very dark skin in the film. SikhNet goes on to depict the Punjabi father of Saibong Kaur as a chauvinist sexist when he tells his daughter at 2:25 in the film, and I quote here, "You shouldn't worry about science anyway. Go make roti with your mother," end quote. From my experience with Punjabi families, SikhNet's depiction of widespread bigotry in Punjab that is directed at discouraging daughters from getting a good education is not typical of Sikh households. In fact, most Sikh Punjabi fathers will do everything in their power to encourage their daughters to become doctors or engineers. But what can we expect from an organization like SikhNet with a corrupt master like Yogi Bhajan? This MSS, or Mukhya Singh Sahib as Yogi Bhajan titled him, Hari Jivan Singh Khalsa, was Yogi Bhajan's right-hand man. You can see him here in this picture of him on the left there in that chair. I knew him quite well. We'd go to La Scala every day with Yogi Bhajan in Beverly Hills and lived a luxurious life. Now, this Hari Jivan said recently and is stated in a letter to the Bhajanist community, and I quote here, "The master Yogi Bhajan later explained to me, that was the way it was supposed to be, as it was the beginning of the switch in Sikh leadership from the Indian community to the American Sikh yogis, recognized or not," end quote. Yogi Bhajan himself said that Guru Gobind Singh Ji could not do for the Khalsa what his Gaur Sikhs have done for the world. In this Yogi Bhajan lecture from Sikh Dharma Brotherhood, this is on page 9, this was in 1976, Yogi Bhajan says, and I quote here, "In my personal experience as gross human body, it is the first time in the world the real perfect shape of the Khalsa came into existence. It didn't happen in the time of Guru Gobind Singh. I see and now look back at the Sikh history." Again, this is Yogi Bhajan going on about this. "We have done, a handful of us, a more tremendous sacrifice for the sake of humanity on this planet than anybody can even relate to." And Yogi Bhajan goes on to say, "Why are the Sikhs," and he's talking about the Sikhs in the Punjab, "who have the prosperity losing their prospect? I have the answer to that," Yogi Bhajan says, "because they have forgotten the great secret practices that were given to them." And no doubt Yogi Bhajan's talking about these ridiculous tantric practices that he called secret, and that were only given to him in some vision, he says, from Guru Ram Das Ji. Why, and Yogi Bhajan goes on to say, why are we, American Sikhs, out of the total insanity, becoming totally creative? End quote. Because we are practicing those practices, and that is all. End quote from Yogi Bhajan. Now, this racist attitude has been continued by the people over at SikhNet and the Yogi Bhajan followers. And I'll use it as an example, a letter that I received from Guru Jot Singh Khalsa. He's the creative director over there at SikhNet, and he was heavily involved in the making of this film, Kaur. He sent me a letter in 2011. This was August 4th, 2011. And I quote his statement here. He says, "Your so-called true Punjabi Sikhs are nothing but a bunch of over-intellectual, violent radicals." End quote. From Guru Jot Singh over there as the director at SikhNet. This is a totally racist remark. And it further shows the agenda of the production people over there at SikhNet and these Yogi Bhajan followers. These people who produced this Kaur film. This agenda is secretly designed to further Yogi Bhajan's agenda of installing the American Sikh yogis as the true leaders of the Sikhs and Sikhi. Now, there have been several former followers of Yogi Bhajan who have been outspoken as of late. And I want to read a comment from Vikram Singh, who is in Yogi Bhajan's group for 20 years. And he was a very good Sikh. He's still a Sikh, too. One of the very few people who left Yogi Bhajan's group and remained a Sikh. Very knowledgeable in Gurmat teachings and very knowledgeable about Sikh history and Gurbani, I would say, Vikram Singh is. So he says this on the Gurmat Learning Zone. He's very concerned about the racism which is occurring in the 3HL Foundation and there at SikhNet. Vikram Singh is responding to a statement by a Yogi Bhajan follower on a social media forum in this quote. Yogi Bhajan follower says, and I'll quote here, Punjabis can be some of the most racist. They don't relate to white Sikhs or black people or Hispanics. Amazing, almost as bad as the Japanese. But this is changing as well. Many Punjabis see us, and he's talking about this Yogi Bhajan follower is talking about Punjabis there. Says they don't relate to Sikhs or black people or Hispanics. Amazing, almost as bad as the Japanese. But this is changing as well. Many Punjabis see us as the saviors of the faith. Inclusion will come to them, or they won't survive. And that was the end quote from the Yogi Bhajan follower. Then Vikram Singh responds on the GLC, the Gurmat Learning Zone, to somebody there. And he says, as an American Sikh, 20 years as a Bhajanist and 24 as an ordinary Sikh, I have heard this kind of talk many times. When I was a Bhajanist, the level of understanding of Sikh history, Sikh Maryada, Punjabi culture, and history of our Guru Sahiban amongst my peers was abysmal, verging on non-existent. In addition, the level of arrogance that we had the right way of Sikhi, or that we were ongoing to save Sikhi from extinction, was extremely high. Personally, I'm deeply disturbed by what I see happening in the Bhajanist movement. And I will say, personally, I experienced this. The Yogi Bhajan was completely racist. He told us that the white Sikhs, meaning us, would rule the world, and that we would lead all of these hapless, ignorant Sikhs from India, as he called them ice cream Sikhs from India, and that Yogi Bhajan had the right way to Sikhi. He discouraged us from associating with Sikhs from India, and from my personal experience, he wanted us to have nothing to do with Sikhs in India and in Punjab. So Vikram Singh goes on to say, he says here, personally, I'm deeply disturbed by what I see happening in the Bhajanist movement. In the field of teaching Kundalini Yoga, the movement seems to be expanding exponentially. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but the New Age people, sorry I can't think of a better term, to whom the Bhajanists are teaching this yoga are very open to and somewhat familiar with the Hindu terminology and practices. Thus, the Kundalini Yoga they teach veers more and more towards Hindu practices. The Bhajanist movement is becoming more and more Hindu-like. Sadly, no one amongst them seems to care. Few Bhajanists have any idea of what sacrifices were made by those who went before to maintain the purity of Sikhi in the face of the relentless drive of certain factions amongst the Hindus to subsume Sikhi back into the relentless juggernaut of Hindu Vata. They don't care about the persecution, genocide, and economic warfare pursued by the Indian government against Sikhs in India. Instead, and he's talking about the SikhNet and the 3HO people and Yogi Bhajan's people, instead, they have this arrogance that they have the true path of Sikhi and that Punjabis will somehow have to follow along. This kind of talk makes me very sad, and I only see further misunderstanding and miscommunications in the future between Bhajanists and Punjabi or origin Sikhs. And that's the end quote from Vikram Singh. So, my contention is that this film that SikhNet has produced is along those lines. Fundamentally, the cartoon is so corny that it's not going to fly with its intended young audience either. This is a generation that knows good animation when it sees it, and they reject unsophisticated efforts like SikhNet's car for what it is. I had the English subtitles running, and I found the writing to be troubled, which is irritating, but not as offensive to my sensibilities as pronoun faults and words out of sync with lips. I also have a problem with the treatment of young men in the cartoon. We shouldn't be surprised by this based on the disconnect with American society that plagues the SikhNet kiddies. There's a big discussion among parents, educators, social workers, juvenile justice experts, etc., about what is happening to boys in this culture. If there was any connection to mainstream thinking at SikhNet, they would understand that depicting male children the way they do in the film is counterproductive. That ham-handed way of portraying boys is as bad as the sexism the Bhajanists at SikhNet think they are fighting. The news about boys hasn't gotten through to them. Like most pertinent subjects that would free a young mind, it's not covered in the humanology coursework at Yogi Bhajan's Mini Pity Academy in Amritsar. Overall, the film is consciously or unconsciously, on SikhNet's part, a lame attempt to try and fool Sikhs around the world into thinking that Gora Western Sikhs have the path to true Sikhi and to further Yogi Bhajan's agenda of installing American Sikh yogis as the true leaders of Sikhs. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.